America, where home loans, they're set for the whole 30 years. That'd be amazing if that was the case. In Australia, home loan rates are variable. They change all the time. So recent, in COVID, the home loan rates were tiny. When I bought my house, the home loan rate was like 1.9%, okay? Now they're like 6. So what do we need to do in the case of your DI? We need to be able to handle simulating a change in interest rate. Please be aware, this is not an interest minimization strategy. As a homeowner, you don't want the rate to go up, right? But for us to acknowledge the realism of the DI, is it important for us to acknowledge that the rate could go up because of like the situation in Australia? Yes. So what we're going to do is show you how this works like a one-off. What happens if the rate increases at some point during the loan? Okay? Because I've seen questions like this in the test, I've seen them in the exam too, and you're going to do it in your DI, no choice there. So one thing to keep in mind, whenever the investment or loan conditions change, that's a whole separate TVM solver. Next, if you have separate TVM solvers, that means you're going to work out the interest paid in each section separately. So can I ask you please to get those 2 points down? When you have a change in an investment or loan, you're going to have a whole separate TVM solver. And if you have separate TVM solvers, you need to work out the interest separately. All right, what do we have to consider mathematically? For rate increases, what's happening? I% is increasing partway through the loan. N is going to change, and it's going to reflect remaining time to pay off the loan. And then what do you do in TVM Solver? You solve for PMT to find the larger amount of money you need to pay to deal with a higher rate. Can you get that section down? Because you can reword that to introduce the higher rates section of your DI, and it also explains how the maths work. So that little section, then we'll do an example. Okay, let's do an example. Can I please remind you that we set up on the first day that we were doing home loans, we set up Mr. T's default home loan for 2025 was I borrowed 500 grand. It was a 5% interest rate for 30 years paying monthly. So we worked that out. If I went through the default loan, I'm going to pay $466,279.60 in interest. Now what we're going to do is see what happens what if the interest rate rose 1% after 5 years of paying off the loan normally? So if we look at my TVM solver here, what does that 360 indicate? That indicates that I have zero debt after 30 years of paying. What could I change here to work out how much debt I have after 5 years of paying? What could I change to work out what the loan's going to look like after I've been going for 5 years, not 30 years? What could I change? Yeah?
Well, you would have to be 5 times 12 to factor in the monthly repayments and the shorter time span.
Yeah, but which variable?
N.
N. So what he's saying is if I want to know what the situation looks like after 5 years, I change N to be 5 years worth, not 30 years. So 5 years times by 12, 60 months. If I've only been paying 60 months, am I now going to owe the bank nothing? No, I've only been paying them for 5 years. So if I solve for FV, that tells me at 5 years in, I still owe the bank 459 grand, 143,053. So that's the first section of your working out. So first 5 years is going to be N is 60, I is 5, PV. I started off having 500 grand debt. That didn't change. My payments were negative $2,684.11. But now, what we're trying to do is work out how much do I still have to pay the bank if I've only paid them for 5 years. PY equals 12, CY equals 12. Why is that important? Because that allows me to do this. Find the new monthly repayment after the rate increase. What did we say the rate was going to rise to? It was going to rise by 1%. So what's 1% more than the starting one?
6.
It's going to be 6. But my PV is not going to be 500 grand anymore. It's going to be what I got the debt down to after 5 years. So I'm starting the rest of this loan at 459,143.53. What do I want to owe the bank at the end of the loan term? 0. And how many years have I already used up in my loan? 5? How many years do I have left to pay it off? 25. So you've got 25 years times by 12. I want to pay it off in 300 payments, but my rate went up. So the only thing that's going to change here is you solve for PMT. So to finish off my loan in the required time, my payments are going to go up by like $400. Why? Because the interest rate went up by 1%. So this is the working out for A, remaining time, N equals 300. The interest rate is now 6, PV was the $459,143.53 that I got the debt down to. We solved for PMT. That went up to negative $2,958.27 to 2 decimal points. Therefore, $58.27 per month. I want to owe the bank nothing at the end of this. PY equals 12, CY equals 12. What I'll do is I'll stop there to give you time to get the first section of the loan, the first 5 years, and then the remaining time at the higher rate. Get down what you need for part A. Yeah, question?
First of all, are your glasses upside down?
Yeah, because then if you do it this way, there's less grip. Right?
I was wondering if it was funny.
It's all right. I have a partner. We're not going out or anything.
Yeah, I know. Just saying.
I don't need to impress anyone else except my own. I can look weird to people. It's fine.
Are you able to type Unicode characters into that?
No idea. You can work it out for me.
What's the thing called again?
It's called stickies. So maybe this maths here might explain when your parents are listening to the news on the radio and it said, oh, interest rates are going up. What does that mean? They're going to have $400 less per month to do cool stuff with. Right? And that was that. I told you my interest rate when I first bought the house was around 2%. My current interest rate now is 5.79. So we're not talking just $400 a month extra. Okay? It's painful. It's not pretty. So can you get those two TVMs, please? I'll scroll down just enough so you can see what question B is. What's the total interest paid on the loan where the rate increased 1% 5 years into the loan? You're going to have to do two interest calculations because there's two TVM solvers here. Right? Let's start the first one here. Interest is going to be the payments, 2684.11 times by... How many payments did I make in the first 5 years? I made 60 payments minus PV. I started off with a debt of 500,000, but I only got the debt down to 459,143.53. So in that time, the amount of interest I paid, 2684.11 times by 60 payments, take away 500 grand. Minus what I got the debt down to. In the first 5 years, I only paid $120,190.13 interest. First 5. But here we have a second section of interest. It's the remainder. It's the last 25 years. So interest equals... Are the payments still 2684.11 after the rate went up to 6%?
Nope.
They're bigger. They're $2,958.27 times by. I made 300 payments of that. Take away. My debt was 459,143.53 minus, I got it down to 0. 2,958.27 times 300. Take away 459,143.53. So in the remaining time, I paid 428,337.47 interest in last 25. How would I find the total interest then? If I've got interest for the first 5 years, interest for the last 25 years, what do I do with those two numbers?
You take them and you put them together.
You put them together. You add them together to find the total interest paid. So total interest is going to be 129,190.13 plus 428,337.47. That's already in my calculator. 129,190.13. 557,527.6. Is that more than the default loan? What was the default loan amount of interest I had to pay?
500,000.
No, this was the default. $279.60 versus this amount. What was the culprit of that? The interest rate only increased by 1%. And it increased by 1% 5 years into the loan. That's just under 100 grand extra because of that 1%. Okay? How much more interest is paid compared to the default loan? You're going to go 557,527.6 minus 466,279.60. 466,279.6. 91. No. It recalculated it. I thought we turned that off. More interest with the 1% increase after 5 years. Do you agree that that's kind of painful? That is 1%. Mine went up 3. Okay? I'm just lucky that I'm paying like $100 extra every week, not just per month, per week. Okay? So in your DI, what I suggest you do is think of 3 variations to this. How could you show the effect of the percentage? Could you have like a 0.5% increase and a 1% increase after 5 years? Both after 5 years? That's going to show you the larger the rate increase, the worse it is for you. What's one change that we could make to show that the later the interest rate changes, the better off you are? Could we do 1% after 10 years? As long as you have a matching rate somewhere, you're able to show the variations to show how it works, okay? So I'll stop the recording there.